Start right top. What am I hitting?
I hit it. Yep.
This guy.
Yep.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First night.
Okay.
Roll call.
Somebody's cell phone.
Blind. Here. Fisher. Here. Mrs. Hess.
Mrs. Sass?
Mrs. Wolfberger. Here. Mrs. Ellison. Here. Mrs. Mandarino. Here. Mr. Meyer.
Here.
Mr. Riley.
Present.
Dr. Volcano.
Approval of agenda. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Purpose of the meeting. Purpose of the meeting is to appoint the chief operating officer and bring in business that is properly presented. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to inform the board of my intention to vote no on this position, not because of any thing against the candidate. I think he'll make a fine addition to the school district. My issue is with the creation of the COO position. Mr. Simonetto will be the fourth business administrator / COOs on the board since I've been here, and they've all had full plates the whole time. Now we're going to add additional duties to them and distract them from their budgeting and other finance responsibilities, and I'm not sure it's a good idea. I know the board thinks it's a good direction. I hope they vote for him. It's just a philosophical difference on the position. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Rowley. Anybody else?
Yes,
Dr. Volcano.
I just like to say it's a common practice in New Jersey that the secretary treasurer of the board does all the things that we have listed for him to do. They're great multitaskers over there. He has all his certificates. The person we're looking at has all the certificates from New Jersey. And like I say, the secretary treasurer in New Jersey does a lot more than our business administrator. And we do have an assistant business administrator that does a lot of the accounting work, along with Marie. So I think that we have to take that into consideration. And he's come in here very qualified and with the background of everything we wanted. And that is very important. And if Sarah, if I'm wrong about that, is it true that the secretary treasurers usually do just about everything for the board?
I can't speak to large districts, my district does have
That's
a very
right.
small.
Right, yeah, but that is done, she says in a small district, even in a larger district, it may have a larger staff, but they do all that.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have one comment.
Go ahead,
Terry.
Mrs. Ellison.
My two concerns, and the reason why I will be voting no, is number one, similar to Mr. Riley, I have some concerns about a COO position which combines two highly visible administrators in our district and combines their workforce into one. And I do have concerns about that, considering the fact that he would be coming from a much smaller school district. On top of the fact he was doing two people's jobs. That's one of my concerns. And the other one is contractually, I have concerns about the extent of the contract. It goes 5 years. So here's where my stance is.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? With that said,
Mr. President, I would request a roll call vote.
we haven't gotten to that part yet. That is number 5. All right. That's just the purpose of the meeting. We'll get to that. With that said, we're going to move on to interested citizens on the regarding agenda items. Feel free to come up and speak at this time. Sign in.
Kevin Dealey, President of the Eastern Area Education Association. I know you thought you got rid of me, but I'm not gone yet. This is probably going to be the last school board meeting that I come to as an official representative of the teachers union. And I know I don't have an association report, but I did want to speak because there were concerned members in regards to the contract and the commingling of those two positions amongst the school, the teachers. Our concerns are almost essentially what Mrs. Ellison alluded to. I'm not familiar with the Kennedy. I don't know Mr. Simonetta at all. I'm sure he's very capable, and I do know that New Jersey, in the position that he previously held in Hackettstown, has only 1,800 students and about 140 teachers and a budget of about $30 million. That being said, it's about 25% of the workload that Easton would have, and I'm not sure that that might be the best thing. The other concern that was raised was that there is essentially a no-fire clause in here for 5 years. And I know that in the past, there have been issues with administrators that have been hired that were, if you're not satisfied with the job that is being conducted by a new hire, you are unable to relieve yourself of that, and you have a 5-year obligation. It's just a concern that I would like to have brought before the board before you make your consideration. The cost, of course, you're going to save at least one position in terms of savings, but is that going to save the district in the long run should something go under the radar? And I'm not going to advocate for increasing the administration, of course, especially when we have fiscal constraints that are causing the possible elimination of teachers or programs, and we just came up with an agreement to save many millions of dollars. So that's it. Thank you for considering our concerns, and thank you.
Sorry.
Can I just clarify something?
Sure.
I just want to clarify for the board that the employment contract contains an incorporation of what is already the law under section 1089, which provides a basic due process requirement for anyone acting as a business administrator in Pennsylvania schools. So to say that there's no fire clause is really very inaccurate. Whether or not he'd have a contract, he'd still have the protection of section 1089. So there's no more or no less due process protection in this agreement than if there would be no contract.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Anybody else on the agenda items? Mr. Anderson? Bless you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
In a time when Mr. Blunt gave you a stunning victory over the union, I'm actually surprised that you are taking a course and signing up a 5-year contract. Our president gets 4 years, our governor gets 4 years, and for all practical purposes, it is a 59-month contract. True, there are issues of cost from which you can terminate it. But I think in today's world, for most of us, you're an at-will employee. And I would think that Mr. Freund is well capable of designing a contract which behaves like an at-will arrangement, which would better suit the board in terms of flexibility. And I refer to the comments of Justice Newman in the Knox case, in the dissenting opinion, where she addressed that business administrators and treasurers are essentially public officers, and they are serving at the pleasure of the appointing authority, which is pretty much an at-will kind of situation. There's 2 ways to do it, and I commend you for having a very wise solicitor who could have helped you pick a more flexible road than the inflexible road under section 1089. As to the contract, it's beautiful. There's 42 essential duties, 16 alone under part 4, 2 of which address the vending machines. They're essential, of course. One addresses the Easton Earned Income Tax Office, which I didn't think we had anymore. There's 19 other duties that are required, including going to all meetings. One of the few things I can discern you could actually terminate somebody for is losing their driver's license, because that's a clear, discernible criteria under the contract. The person reports to the superintendent and is evaluated by the superintendent, but reports to the board. God help the individual that has to work that way. This would get an F if it was a case study at Wharton
probably would get a D minus if it was at Fells, and we're not here to grade it. We're here to run $100 and some odd million business. The individual may be stellar, may well warrant the $130,000. I warrant more than that for taking on the challenge. I do think that your solicitor could have helped you address a much, much more flexible contract that doesn't last for 59 months. Incidentally, the contract says it automatically expires at the end without notice. Then it turns around and says you must give them 60 days notice before the end of the contract. Then it turns around and says if we don't give you proper notice, it continues anyway. Now, I'm confused. And I read some of this stuff on a daily basis. God help you as to what it really means. It could have been much better designed, particularly for a position that is this critical to your future. The individual may be great. The contract, it's a C minus, ladies and gentlemen. Please, you deserve better.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
I'm Bob Fano. I want to also address the contract. And I think, the board probably sifted through a lot of resumes and everything to come down to this selection and all. As well, probably a lot of quality people. But I think out of the whole length of it and everything, there's two issues that I look at that I'm concerned about. And with a lot of things going on from an economic point of view in this district, ends up being the length and the term of this contract. I know I've been talking to some others, and there's varying things that go on in this county. There are some that are going to be looking at offering 3 years to new people that come onto the board or come on as a business manager. And there's other ones where they retain the business manager, and based on their performance, they'll out for a bonus and a 10-year contract. So there are varying degrees, and there's other ones in this county that don't even have contracts. So I think there's a lot to look at and be concerned about as you put together this package and everything. You look at 3%, and we look at what just happened again with the staff, and you have to think, where are we heading with that, and then the guarantee on top of it. So I'd like to consider all that as you look ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else?
I got strengths of his notice provisions. I think that, Mr. Anderson raises some points that I think if a layperson reading this might have some confusion, not being lay in the sense of not being a lawyer, but not knowing the culture, perhaps, of the education code, the school code. Essentially, what this provides for on page 2 is, and it's important to notice, this is in contrast to a typical superintendent or assistant superintendent's contract, which you often find the same kind of language in these business administrators' contracts, that unless there's an affirmative action to renew, this contract ends at the end of 59 months. The provision of notice really, in a sense, I suppose, is a throwaway. It doesn't really mean a whole lot because I've taken out of it any penalty to the district for failing to notify him in 60 days. There's very often found in these contracts a provision that failure to notify employees such as this, particularly it's in code with the superintendent, that they get a new contract. I took that out. With regard to the last provision, I agree that if you read this not knowing some of the background, it does appear to be sort of contradictory. That is, the written employment agreement expire without renewal or proper notification. Other intentional to offer a new contract. Section 1089 of the school code shall continue to govern the chief operating officer's employment relationship with the school district. Essentially, what that means is that if you continue to employ him on a day-to-day basis, and you want to terminate him for cause, you have to follow 1089. The reason this is in here is because there have been some cases questioning the effect of whether or not you still are offered due process. Whether 1089 applies in the absence of a contract. This makes that clear. So, with deference to Mr. Anderson's observations, I think it is clear that this contract basically terminates without a express action on the part of this board to continue the review.
As a board, when we looked at creating the COO position, there was a consensus with the board as we went forward. And I hear that there is not a consensus by all board members on having one position. We'll save approximately $175,000 by having one position. If, as a board, you want to go back to the two positions, you need to obviously let our administration know so that we can proceed accordingly. But I do see that there's hesitation, and I do not want hesitation at all. We have the most highly qualified candidate before us, and as a board, I want to make sure that the board is pleased with the process and how we are proceeding, because that's only fair to the board, to our community, and also to the candidate.
Another discussion on this? Not. We're gonna move on to 5, and then we can have further discussion on this position. Because that's when we can discuss. Okay, let's move on to 5, new business, part A, chief operating officer position, motion.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
discussion.
I will, again, I just want to sort of reiterate some of the concerns. I believe that we have the best qualified candidate from our administration's research and the process. Absolutely, you know, my concern is with this contract. And when we had discussed and agreed to put the two positions together because of fiscal concerns and the desire to try to realign things, we did not discuss length of contract. And this was something we only just had received. This was at the tail end of the process, not prior to the process beginning. And I have no problem voting for the candidate. But the 5-year contract is a concern to me. And
Can I just make a follow-up comment? I think something that we have to consider as well is that a qualified candidate is not going to be in any position for one year contract. I just want to throw that out there for consideration. Just something to think about.
Okay. Now, the vote here is for us separating the chief operating officer position. It's not, yeah, so at this point right now, is there any other discussion on this?
Wait, Jerry, can you repeat that? We are voting right now to separate the positions?
No. What we're voting for, the first part of the agenda is to vote on the chief operating officer's position. And then we are going for the appointment on B of the chief operating officer. Do you understand where we are?
Thank you.
All right, so the first part is the position. Is there any other further discussion on the position?
I think it's pretty much been stated the way, I feel, and people that were expressing concern about putting two major positions together, class delegation of responsibilities of Mr. Fisher's position as assistant treatment superintendent could be thinking about in different ways. I just have concern of somebody coming to our district in the position of business manager / also assistant superintendent who has not experienced the school district the size of ours with the complexities that are currently going on financially within our district on top of it. So without further reiterating any of the other comments, that's how I stand on that.
Thank you, Mrs. Elton.
One quick comment.
Go ahead, Dr. Marquino.
Mr. Myers, we're not on that, but coming to our district, actually, this gentleman we have lives in our district, and he's followed, I'm sure, in the paper some of our problems and stuff, so he's not coming to our district, he's here, he just wants a job with us.
Thank you, Dr. Marquino. Is there any other discussion? With that, I will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Let's do a poll. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher? Yes.
Mrs. Hess?
This is,
Mrs. Holzberger? Yes. Mrs. Ellison?
No.
Mrs. Mambrino? Yes. Mr. Wiley?
Nay.
Dr. Volcano?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
yes.
7 yes, 2 no. Motion carries.
Chief Operating Officer position is now officially been adopted. We're going to go to the appointment of a chief operating officer at this point right now. Have a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. No discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I don't know where she's on.
Mr. Schaefer, roll call, please.
Ms. Bellotti? Yes. Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Hess?
Mrs. Hess? What'd you say, Jody?
Yes.
Okay,
Mrs. Holzberger? No. Mrs. Ellison?
No.
Mrs. Mambrino? Yes. Mr. Wiley?
Nay.
Dr. Volcano?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
yes. With,
6 yes, 3 no. Motion carries.
with that vote, Mr. Michael Finetti is the new CEO of Eastern Area School District. Welcome aboard. You wanna stand up and shake hands, or be welcome aboard?
But I just want to say, I appreciate all the comments and concerns, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you and this community. And I think we have the right people in place from what I've followed along, and with the administration that I've met thus far, I think we'll be able to do very good things. And I really thank you all.
Thank you, my friend. All right, let's move on to C, auditing services. Motion to approve the contract with Palmer Company for auditing service for 2011, 12, and 13 per proposal of the committee. Does I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there this? Jody, that's fine. Is there discussion on this? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Mr. Palmer, you've been retained.
Thank you, appreciate that.
All right, we're gonna move on to D, engineering service. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion or anything else?
Mr. President, I would move that we table the contract to the next meeting for further review by our legal counsel.
Is there a second
And
on
I'll
the motion?
second that. I'll second.
So we are moving to table the contract of Dewey Engineering, so that we can look at the contract that we just received earlier today. Okay, did you guys hear that on the other end?
Yes, it is.
Sherry,
Yeah,
we're tabling Dewey's contract, so, John Thorne can look at it. You will get a copy of the contract, any questions you have, please forward them to Joan, and, John will look them over, all right? With that said, can I have a motion to table this contract? There's a motion?
Yeah.
Any more discussion?
No
Okay,
discussion.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Okay, we're gonna table Dewey's contract to later on this month. We will bring it back at our regular meeting at the end of this month, okay? With that said, we're moving on to 6, interested citizens on non-agenda items. Please step up to the microphone and say what you have to say. I see Mr. Illy's getting antsy, so that means he's gonna speak up tonight. Just kidding, Craig.
No problem,
Nice.
I appreciate the humor, thank you. Per usual, I lived in college. Just a couple of quick items. First of all, I wanted to thank Board Member Bellotti for her comments regarding pre and post care. I think they make an awful lot of sense. I would ask that the board give very serious consideration to just that avenue. I think that providing pre and post care as a matter of school board duty is something that will provide equality throughout the entire district. I think that, as I've mentioned and many others have in prior meetings, there's an incredible body of evidence that points to pre and post care as having a direct impact on the quality of education in the district and the performance of students. And I think that I would caution about making it part of your contracted arrangement with teachers and staff. I would much prefer seeing it be done outsourced to professionals who do it best. I think that there are many out there, including the organization that has been evaluated for the March School, but there are many quality organizations out there with a proven record of success who could make a significant difference in the performance of students in the East Indiana School District. And I would please ask that you give very, very serious consideration to this alternative. I'd also like to share with my last minute and a half that I'm incredibly disappointed, not in this gentleman, but in the process that occurred here. I think there are very serious concerns that were expressed today by the board. I think those concerns should have been expressed earlier in this process. I'd also say that I see the Pennsylvania School Board Association's fingerprints all over this, and I am incredibly concerned. I can't say strongly enough that you must bring this 5-year process to an end. I'm very disappointed to hear that there are not individuals out there who feel strongly enough about their capabilities and abilities that they'd be willing to put themselves on the dime for a shorter period of time. No-cut contracts serve no useful purpose in this district whatsoever. And I'm sorry to say this, Dr. McGinley, but that certainly falls in your category as well. I'm incredibly disappointed at this type of contract in the past. I still have 21 seconds.
No personal tax, please.
I know, not personal, I mean from a professional standpoint. Dr. McGinley is a very capable individual, but having this type of contract in existence in this district at this point and reaffirmed by another contract of its type, I'd ask that you please bring that type of process to a close, that it not continue. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
I'd just like to say something real quick. I just want to note that, and I think the board will agree with me, that today is D-Day, and we recognize the almost 3,000 people, soldiers, that lost their life today. You and we have 2 veterans at this table, and I'd like that in the minutes because we don't want to forget their sacrifice and what they did.
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. For all those veterans, past and present. Go ahead.
Follow-up question too. We received some correspondence post last meeting asking about the before and after care program from companies, that do business in our school district currently. They're trying to make their plans for next year. And they're wondering if they're going to be in the school with always standard meeting. What is the timeline that the administration is suggesting for this feasibility study? And when will the administration be able to let these other entities know?
Well, I kind of think you're putting the cart before the horse because once we get the feasibility study, then it has to be passed, agreed on by the board that we're going to do this.
Right, but we do have 2 organizations, we have a lot of
I
families
understand this,
that
but
currently
I understand where you're coming from, but we still have to wait. Let's follow the procedure. Let's not rush into this thing. We still going to have to follow procedures. We're going to have to wait for the study. We're going to have to discuss it as a subcommittee, bring it back, and decide where we go from there. So that's only being fair to everybody.
Then my question to the administration is, what is the timeline? When will there be some indication, because I'm your goal seeking, I'm sure, but specifically being asked, what does this company tell its families? And I don't know what your timeline is, so I'm asking, what is the administration's timeline for making a recommendation to the board?
If you're referring to me, Mrs. Oldenburg, I wasn't given a timeline. Or under the direction of the board, there was no timeline stated. So if you would like to vote on the timeline, I would graciously accept that timeline. But as of right now, I had planned to come up with something for the last board meeting in June,
That's a few weeks away.
but there was no direction. on that,
So I think that's fair, if we don't have a response, we'll be back in 3 weeks.
Well, again, I think that if the board asked for a feasibility study, and perhaps we were remiss in not asking them for a deadline at that point, but I would think that our administration, knowing what's at stake here, would be able to, come up with a reasonable timeline and make the recommendations accordingly. I don't know what time it requires, what sort of, it would be appropriate, I think, for us to delegate or get maybe something that we should be able to do that. What's the timeframe? When can these other organizations expect to have an answer for their families?
You're gonna report to us back.
Well, I could say,
Well, executive
I could say
session
the end of July, but, you know, I planned on doing it by the end of June.
So can we have some study by the, executive session? Is that possible, Jeff? Okay. We'll have it for our executive session, and then we'll bring it out to the
Can I
board.
please then request that with the feasibility study, because of time that might be involved with that, if the timeline is not that it's feasible to do this starting with the next school year,
Do what?
but there, well, to offer before and after care services, if that's part of this, that there be some recommended action by the administration for our current existing programs. So that at a minimum, our current existing programs are not left floundering and you have all these families.
We have one program, if I'm
We
not
have
mistaken.
two schools.
With Tracy and Fort.
And it's not fair to those families. I mean, so if feasibility study is gonna take time, if we could at a minimum expect a recommendation that's with those two existing programs for next year, so they can prepare for it. So that would be my request for review. I agree.
Anybody else have any discussion on that?
Yeah, I would agree with what she's saying. I mean, we're going to throw out what we already have. We're looking at what's coming in new.
Okay.
So, I don't know if we need a vote on that or not.
At this point right now, we just need to come up with an agenda, program for it. We need to come up with an answer for that meeting. We already have two programs that are there.
And one thing, again, I think most of this board is concerned not with the before and after care. I think we would go for that. It's the idea is that it doesn't cost this school district extra money, so they're getting a bargain, and the parents that aren't taking part in it are paying some of the cost.
Okay.
And I think that's the main thing. We don't want to charge parents that aren't taking part in this.
Understandable, Dr. Buchanan.
Right.
Along with that, the only thing I have to say is, whatever, if we go that route, it's gonna be the board decision who comes to the door.
Right.
There's no other, do we have any discussion on any other non-agenda item? Oh, the reporter's gonna ask a question. Put the clock on now, please.
Colin McAvoy, I'm a reporter with the Express Times,
That scares me.
resident of Bethlehem. I don't normally like to do this during meetings, in fact, I don't think I've ever done it, but I just wanted to ask solicitor a clarification question. It was said that the feasibility study would be discussed in executive session. I don't believe that's an executive session matter. I was looking to ask you that.
On track.
I didn't hear that, so I didn't hear it.
Is it an executive session matter?
Contract.
Yeah.
As an executive session.
Is that correct, Mr.?
Well, the feasibility study is feasibility for the entire contract.
In cost.
It's not, it's only collective bargaining contract.
And it's a feasibility study on the construction.
No, feasibility study on the possible, before and after they.
Oh, the daycare question, I'm sorry. It's possible that there are aspects of that could definitely be executive session material. If it affected labor issues speculate more until it actually comes to them and see what's actually going to be discussed.
Okay, I just wanted that.
I'm sorry, I missed the daycare part. I was
That's okay.
thinking about building buildings.
Mr. Anderson. It would not be a meeting of like that can be twice in one night.
I didn't bring up daycare, so I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, I remind you that the policy in effect for many a year was no pay, no stay. At least one of the contractors has been in your building without paying. The amount is arguable. According to your business manager, you haven't received $1. So I'm most reluctant for anybody to encourage the presence of somebody who hasn't paid their fair share, period. There is an argument perhaps for nonprofits, but one of them is not a nonprofit. Some of the other vendors are for-profit institutions. So I think you're getting yourself on a very slippery slope, but your existing policy is exquisitely clear. One of the problems with your past administration is they all said, well, Mr. Anderson, I'm not allowed to go throw them out. Well, you've got a new COO, he's got some very clear obligations and responsibility, so I think he could show up at the door and say, you owe me, or your history. And that's certainly the kind of performance that I would expect on this long overdue. Or studied forever, but we don't need more people who are freeloading. And incidentally, as to the topic of freeloading, I'll give you a triple header. Non-residents of Pennsylvania using an affidavit of whatever, secure services from the Easton Area School District, but the person doesn't live at the affidavit address, but lives someplace else in the West Ward, and uses that falsification to attend the High Valley Charter School for the Performing Arts. Now, your business manager's already addressed that that's a $350,000 drain, and I've already addressed that their charter doesn't look like a real charter. So maybe it's time we dusted off some of these other drains of our money. Now, this may be completely legitimate, and the affidavit may be completely legitimate, but you've had one other senior administrator who's reported on the theft of education services. And at $15,000 a pop, on a border location, there are thousands of potential losses to this district. Now, the state ties your hands behind your back and slaps you with a wet noodle. I agree. But some of these things can be corrected. And as a state, we can correct others. It's long overdue that we terminate this as a so-called victimless crime. It's not a victimless crime. Okay? And seriously, I think it's a repetitive crime. If I get up every morning and send my kid to the wrong school district, I violated the law that day, and the next day, and the next day. There ought to be some people posting their families someplace else when they steal our services. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Anderson, if you have information that you believe that there's a fraudulent 1302, I'd be happy to share that with the idea of the superintendent confidential.
Unfortunately, I get 90% of a story, and because of confidentiality and other issues, I'm trapped as to what I can prove versus what I believe. But I do believe
If you have information that can lead us to investigate, but certainly if that's correct, it's fraudulent.
I agree with you. My other suggestion, perhaps more fruitful, is a $500 tip fee. I'm told to clutter your guests with suggestions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. A $500 tip fee.
Oh, okay.
Is there anybody else?
I'd like to ask about the budget and budget workshop. Would you prepare for an additional budget workshop between now and June 23rd?
Did you guys hear that on the other end of these telephones? Oh, I'm sorry, Jody. Jody, did you hear that? Maria's asking if we need another budget workshop before the 20, next meeting? Before the 23rd, to go over the budget items that we just got last week. When, I know. I see the list going when.
When, yeah, the 20th would be Monday, 2 weeks from today.
Yep.
Administration have final recommendations on staffing?
Yeah, I understand. I looked at that.
You know, just, will everything be finalized?
But the 20th would give you, that's close as we can get to the meeting, right?
We're kind of waiting here for
two unions negotiating. So, but, we need to have that, we need to go one way or another at the 20th, whatever we're going to do.
I don't know if I would be able to make the 20th.
Okay. Let's pick a date if we're going to do it. Anybody check your calendars real quick.
We are having a finance committee on the 16th, is that correct?
Why don't we do it then? Is that what you're asking?
I would like to suggest that.
I also have a building and ground meeting that same night.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not gonna have me at Old Dark 30.
Meet
The 20th is probably.
20th is probably the best.
What else is on the finance, right, what else is on the finance committee agenda?
You build the two rounds first, and then you do
Well, we can flip flop them, then I can leave. No, just kidding. All right, we'll flip flop them. We'll do buildings and grounds first, and then you guys can do finance and combine that meeting again on the 16th.
Yeah.
Okay with everybody?
Here, that should be a board meeting. If everybody's gonna take part in it, it would take, Mr.
Buildings and
Solicitor-
grounds will be a committee, and then we'll go right to a board meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be a board meeting if 9 of us are gonna be
That's
there.
a public. Thank you, Dr. Martino.
And if you have additional questions, please forward them to me.
Okay, Jody, did you hear that? You okay on the 16th?
I know, I probably will not be able, I won't be around the 16th.
All right.
Either the 20th, so
All right.
any questions I have, I'll be sure to ask.
All right, that'll work for me. Terry, you okay? Any other board member have a problem with 16th?
No, they start at 7:30.
You're gonna start at 7:30 with a board meeting. Okay, is that okay with everybody? Okay, we can close that, still, you got that? Advertise that. All right, anything else? If not, can I have a motion to get out of Dodge? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.